The Powerbomb. Definitely one of the most famous moves when it comes to wrestling. And if you look at the Wikipedia page, you'll see that this is how it's represented. A couple of little stick figures there just going at it. We've got 40 much better looking examples of the Powerbomb in this video. I have done similar videos like these with my favourite Puro finishers, as well as a big video on the Lariat, and I think it's about time for the Powerbomb to get its moment in the light, so to speak. So, here we go then. We've got Powerbombs, not all of which are necessarily finishers. There's a whole load of variations. We've got the classics, and we've got a bunch of modern ones too. So let's do it. Obviously, a good place to start as any in this alphabetical list is with the Awesome Bomb, Mike Awesome's legendary move. I mean, the Awesome Bomb is more than one Powerbomb really, it's a whole load of Powerbombs that fit under the same name, but you've got your classic Powerbomb, you've got your running Awesome Bomb, you've got your super Awesome Bomb. There's a whole load of them and they all look damn good. Mike Awesome is certainly one of those guys who's exciting to watch because of all the things he could do, and this big Powerbomb, no matter what the variation is, always tends to be a good cap to most of his matches. When we've got another pretty awesome bomb lined up second, we've got Awesome Con's Powerbomb, which is kind of also known as the Awesome Bomb. This is the first of several sit-out Powerbombs in this list, and with someone like Awesome Con, who always just looked so intimidating, especially back in TNA in the mid-2000s when she was doing this move to knockouts every night that TNA was on, it just looks nasty. It's a perfect move for such a dominant Joshi wrestler. Another sit-out bomb next, one of the most famous ones on here, it's got to be the Batista bomb. I mean, there's not a whole huge amount of things different when it comes to the various sit-out powerbombs on this list, but it's often just the little touches that make this. I mean, often because this is Batista's main finisher, you've usually got the big setup, you've got the big powerbomb itself, which apparently by all accounts was pretty sucky to take. I always like the nice little rollout, the rollback that Batista would often do, rather than the kind of just stay in the sit-out position, like do the little rollout and then pin normally. I always kind of like that. One of the little things that perhaps makes this a bit different. Obviously a famous move, obviously a move when you're talking about powerbombs, it's got to be in here. Another move that I imagine was quite sucky to take is up next at number 4, the late, great, highly underrated Chris Candido with the blonde bombshell. Nothing too much to say about this, it's a powerbomb, except it's a super powerbomb, it's from the top, and yeah, that just looks blooming nasty. Actually, I think the first time I remember seeing this move was actually done to Chris Candido. I remember Marty Jannetty doing it to him at a Survivor Series 95, I believe it was, in their kind of opening match of the night, I think, and Marty Jannetty did the blonde bombshell to Candido, or bodied on a skip as he was then, to eliminate him, and it was just like one of those kind of agape moments that you remember when watching wrestling as a kid. Coming in the 5th spot, we've got one of those incredibly swanky moves, always a favourite of mine, the Blue Thunder Bomb. Now, obviously, this is a move that's originated by Jun Akiyama. Obviously, Jun Akiyama's variation of it is pretty good. It was his main finisher for the first few years of his career, the Blue Trunks era, hence the name. But I think in modern days, there's two wrestlers in particular that really define this move. One being Sami Zayn, who also used it when he was El Generico, and Konosuke Takeshita. Both of them are absolutely amazing at this move. Chris Daniels also did a great one too, but yeah, Zayn and Takeshita, it's hard to pick between those two when it comes to this move. Nothing too much swanky about the next one, it's the Border Toss. Border Toss, this is kind of perhaps more of a regular powerbomb in some ways, but then also very much not. Again, I can't imagine this move is pretty nice to take. I mean, it's Hernandez basically lifting a guy up and then just flinging them halfway across the ring. And they tend to get a fair bit of height when Hernandez chucks them. I mean, I think there's specifically one that he does to Sonjay Dutt at one stage, which is just like, oh, damn. Great move, obviously. I mean, Hernandez is, again, another one of those big guys, the sort of guy, the classic guy who you imagine has got to have a powerbomb as his finisher, and this is a good one. The Dr. Bomb. Dr. Death Steve Williams. Steve Williams is a man with a lot of great finishers, obviously. Obviously, you've got the Homicide Backdrop, you've got the Oklahoma Stampede. The Dr. Bomb is kind of his, I suppose, standard finisher, his regular driver, so to speak. You only necessarily need the big backdrop for the major guys. The Dr. Bomb is often enough to finish the little ones. beautiful gut wrench powerbomb. You gotta love a gut wrench. There's a couple of other guys who also do a really good gut wrench powerbomb. Thesz did a really quite nasty looking fall-in Dr. Bomb variation, but this is the classic gut wrench sit out powerbomb. It just looks great, and of course a very believable move for a big heavyweight wrestling type of guy like Steve Williams. Kind of go back with number 9 here. We kind of go back to early 2000s, mid 2000s indie days, CZW days. And if you watched CZW back then, as I often did, you likely know the name of Rick Blade. Rick Blade was often in a lot of the highlight clips doing various crazy things. And he also had this kind of actually quite swanky when it comes to indie moves, powerbomb variation, the edge of the blade. This is kind of like he puts them in a hammerlock, spins them around, gets like a fisherman going, almost thinks going to be a fisherman, but then lifts them up for a powerbomb. It's just a nice looking move. Are all the parts of it strictly necessary? Maybe not, but then that's kind of what you get with some of these moves. I mean, at least I think the thing with the edge of the blade is that this is a move that could probably be done on most people. Some of them could only really be done on select people, you feel. This is a good one. This next one is one that's always tends to make the list of best powerbombs, even though the guy who used this move only used it a few times really, and yet it remains forever associated with him. It's Kane's fall-in powerbomb. I think this fall-in powerbomb, he used this while he was still masked, and I think he used it, when did he use this? What, 2001? 2002? It's a vicious move. I mean, it's a powerbomb, but it's Kane falls with the opponent, and considering that Kane's 7 foot tall, obviously that's going to look nasty as hell. Maybe that's the reason why it wasn't actually used that much, because, again, probably quite nasty to take. And yet this move would be associated with Kane forever after, even if he only used it a handful of times, because it was then basically for years his secondary finisher in the SmackDown games. He'd have the chokeslam from hell, and he would also have the fall-in powerbomb, and it looked pretty good in that game too. So kind of, I think, mainly thanks to SmackDown, that move's always been associated with Kane, and it is a damn good powerbomb. The Golden Star Powerbomb, Kota Ibushi. I mean, my favourite Ibushi finisher is always going to be the Kamigoye, because you can't beat a nice knee to the face, can you? But this is very similar to a move that we're going to see later on. Obviously, we're going to see the last ride. It's a last ride, but with the sit-out. And I think you can probably tell already, I like a nice sit-out with the powerbomb. And again, it's an appropriately grand-looking move for someone who likes to present themselves as the god of wrestling and so on. I think, yeah, again, this is another move that you've got to have here, really. You can't not have the Jacknife. Kevin Nash, Diesel, Big Daddy Cool, Big Sexy, however you want to call him. The Jacknife is kind of one of those, I almost guess it's a perfect move for Kevin Nash, because what does he do? I mean, he's 7 foot, so all he does is he picks them up and he drops them down. It's a perfect move for someone as lackadaisical, I think would be the best way to put it, the most diplomatic way to put it in style, as Kevin Nash is. Not to knock him, that's just his style. I mean, Jim Cornette may have always said, well, he only does like 5 moves, but the moves that he does, he tends to do very well and very effectively, and this is no exception. I mean, what else do you really need to do when you're that big? You just pick them up and drop them from a great height, and especially on cruiserweights, which they often were recipients of this move, looks pretty damn good. Especially Rey Mysterio, I remember taking a few quite nasty ones. Not quite as nasty as when he was thrown into the WCW truck, but still pretty nasty regardless. Next up, this is one I ummed and ahed with. Is this a powerbomb? Is this a pile driver? And I think considering that it would have been a powerbomb if executed traditionally, it probably does belong here. The Kawada driver, Toshiaki Kawada, often mistakenly known as the Ganso bomb. This is the move that when Kawada had his broken arm in the match with Misawa in early 99, Misawa tries to reverse the Soul powerbomb into a Hurricane Rana, and Toshiaki Kawada drops him on his freaking head. Cue the commentator going, "Ah!" And clip that was all over the internet back in the early 2000s. Only used a couple of times by Toshiaki Kawada, never finishes the match, but just on sheer notoriety alone, this move has to be in this list, especially if you do consider it a powerbomb. I was thinking, is this a pile driver? But then, no, it's not really. It's just a ridiculously sheer drop powerbomb. A sheer drop powerbomb like no other. I've already mentioned this move, but obviously this one's got to be here. It's the last ride. I mean, I can't say I was ever a big fan of Undertaker back in his American badass days. Big Evil was better when he started just becoming a hideous, bullying heel. But undeniably, the last ride is an iconic powerbomb. Just the big lift that he gets as the poor guy, like, usually starts flailing on his arms going, no, no, and then just gets slammed into the ground. And Undertaker always doing that big fist pump afterwards. It's clearly very effective. I mean, not as iconic as the Tombstone Piledriver, obviously. I mean, that's always really going to be his move, but the last ride's a pretty damn good second one. Jushin Liger's Ligerbomb, another sit-out move. Obviously, this one can be done stationary. This can also be done running. The running Ligerbomb tends to be more of a finisher, perhaps, than the regular old Ligerbomb. Although I think, on balance, I do actually prefer the more standard Ligerbomb. I just like, again, this is kind of a sit-out move, and we've seen a few of these, but Jushin Liger just tends to get a nice snap on this move. It's probably better appreciated when you use this move in games, especially a game like Fire Pro where there's like about 50 different powerbomb variations. There's just an extra kind of snap to the Liger bomb, almost as if it takes Jushin Liger back himself to do it. Like, he kind of ends up flat on the floor after doing it and then has to do a sit up. I just think that's really cool. Again, it's just the little things. We've got the Orange Crush, Kenta Kobashi, one of his earlier moves, a move that he often used before he kind of gained a bunch more weight and started facing heavyweights that he couldn't necessarily do the move to that well. This is a suplex powerbomb, and again, a move that looks really quite powerful, especially if it finishes fluidly into a sit-out. Again, this is something like back in the early 90s, Kenta Kobashi could do a lot easier, but when it came to more heavyweight opponents, it kind of became a bit more dangerous. Not that that stopped him breaking it out a couple of times in his later career, and when he did break it out in his later career, well, it looked as nasty as you would expect. Obviously, you can't do a list like this and not give credit to the originator of the powerbomb, and that man is Lou Thesz. I think there's only really a couple of clips of Lou Thesz doing this kicking around. By all accounts, this was innovated in a match in the late 50s against Antonino Rocca, and you can see the clip of it where, and they almost seem to be in between, not necessarily sure like what they're going to do in the clip, and then Lou Thesz just drops him down and gets the first fall of that match. I believe it's the first fall of that match from that original powerbomb. This is also a really good one in the Fire Pro games. In the Fire Pro games, this is always Lou Thesz's finisher, and it's one of the nastiest looking moves in the game because, again, he just picks a guy up and drops them on their neck. It looks a lot nastier actually in the Fire Pro games than it does whenever I've seen the move in real life, but obviously this is where the powerbomb started, so this move has to be here. Kevin Owens, or Kevin Steen, the pop-up powerbomb. I thought, should I include this? Should I include the apron powerbomb? But I think the pop-up powerbomb is Kevin Owens. It's been a good go-to for him for quite a while during his WWE run. I think a lot of people obviously kind of perhaps disappointed when Kevin started coming into the WWE, NXT and all that he didn't obviously use the package pile driver, which he was incredible. I mean, not a move that he innovated himself, that was Arja Khan, but a move that he's very much associated with. I think that was a bit disappointing, but the pop-up powerbomb was still a nice, powerful looking substitute. Just how quick the move is something that I've already appreciated. I like a powerbomb that doesn't necessarily start with the usual, like, you know, head between the legs sort of thing, like actually just lifting them straight up and bringing them back down as happens in the pop-up powerbomb, I think is very nice indeed. We've got the Rack Bomb. This is AJ Styles' move. This was a move originated by Lioness Asuka as the Tower Hacker Bomb, but basically it starts as a torture rack and then finishes as a power bomb. I think I had to use the AJ Styles version here because there has to be a place for AJ Styles on this list, because often when it comes to so many moves, AJ Styles is just a complete master of execution. Everything that he does just looks flawless, and this is a great example of that. The Rack Bomb has never been really a finisher for AJ Styles, nothing like the Styles Clash or the Spiral Tap or anything like that, but it's just a great middle of the moveset kind of move, like always good for a near fall, and just like everything he does just looks beautiful. Another iconic, one of the most famous of all powerbombs is next. You've got to have the Crucifix Powerbomb, and when you're talking about the Crucifix Powerbomb, obviously you're talking about Razor Ramon, Scott Hall, Razor's Edge, Outsider's Edge, whatever you want to call it. As Scott Hall often apparently always used to introduce himself to new wrestlers with, he said, "Hi, I'm Scott Hall. Make sure you tuck your chin in when you take my finisher." And you can kind of see why with this. I mean, again, just with the Razor's Edge, as I always remember as a child, you got the setup, you got the big arms outstretched, you got the guy just draped over the back, and it's almost like, I think as soon as Razor gets the guy up, like with his arms wide, it's kind of, you know, that's it, there's no getting out. Then just, you know, falling down, ban, quick, you know, slap of the hands, free count. One of the nastiest moves from that time. Claudio Castagnoli, another guy that's got lots of different moves, all beautifully executed. The Ricola bomb is here. Another straightjacket move, kind of similar in many ways to the pyramid driver. Straightjacket, sit-out powerbomb. But I always like the little call that goes with it, you know, the Ricola. That's a very nice double C touch. And I've always loved Claudio Castagnoli anyway, so this was always going to get a spot. On the more traditional powerbomb side, this list could obviously not take place without having Sid Vicious on it. Psycho Sid, the late great Psycho Sid, sadly passed away recently. Sid Vicious, this is a more classic powerbomb, not a just falling off powerbomb the same way like Kevin Nash's is. This is one where often, mainly more during his earlier career, Sid Vicious kind of comes down with the guy, brings him down. Usually Sid Vicious would often end up on one knee after doing this move. And again, well, a powerbomb is always going to be a brilliant move for someone who's of that height, of that stature, someone who is built like the proverbial brick shithouse like Sid Vicious is. Powerbombs just come naturally here, and obviously this one's got to be here. I mean, it's Sid Vicious. I mean, who doesn't love Sid Vicious? I mean, if you don't love Sid Vicious, then sorry, you're just not right. So obviously Sid Vicious's finisher has to be here. I already talked a fair bit about the Soul Powerbomb, Toshiaki Kawada's finisher, when I did the favourite Puro moves list, because obviously that was on here. It is one of my favourites, and absolutely one of my favourite powerbombs. If this was to be more of a countdown list, this would easily be in the top 5. Again, with this move, as I said back in that video, this move is often all about the struggle. Toshiaki Kawada doing whatever it takes to win, just grunting and gurning, his lack of teeth showing to the world as he tries to get the opponent up, gets that one big final lift up on their shoulders, brings them down, and then puts all of his body weight, that final little touch at the end, putting all the body weight into the pin, I think is something that just makes this one of my favourites. Speaking of moves that are pretty similar to other ones in the list, here we have the Spirit Bomb. This is Keith Lee's big bomb. Keith Lee is again the perfect sort of wrestler that you would expect to have a powerbomb, and although this one is kind of similar in many ways to Kota Ibushi's Golden Star powerbomb, you've got the kind of last wide elevation along with the sit out in the end, it just looks even better with someone like Keith Lee. Also kind of enhanced perhaps often in the indie days when it's done in those kind of small rins with those acoustics that really just rin out, like really feeling like a massive crash, a literal bomb has hit the ring. You gotta love it. Next up we have the Splash Mountain, also known as the Black Tiger Bomb, and this is a move that I've gone with Dynamite Kansai for this one. Dynamite Kansai is perhaps the most successful wrestler, I think, with this move. Oftentimes when Black Tiger used it, mainly Eddie Guerrero Black Tiger, it didn't necessarily always go right for him, especially when he was up against Rey Mysterio. Here with Dynamite Kansai, the Splash Mountain tends to be a bit more dependable. Not many people Hurricane Rhino out of this one. And of course, you can't forget the die-hard Kansai, the second rope Splash Mountain, that's a real damn killer. Great move. The Sunset Flip Powerbomb is up next. This is a fairly common move when it comes to the junior heavyweights. Eddie Guerrero in particular does an outstanding Sunset Flip Powerbomb that was incredibly close to being here, but in the end I decided to go with something a little bit different, highlight the awesome variation of the Sunset Flip Powerbomb that Jerry Lynn does. Jerry Lynn's one just has that little bit of extra touch to it. He traps the opponent on the ropes in that position, but then he does a nice wee springboard near them, does a little half turn, and then does the sunset flip powerbomb. I just think that looks really damn nice, so that's why I'm highlighting in here. We go back to 2000s indie times, and this time it's the Backseat Boys and the T-Gimmick, Johnny Cashmere and the late great Trent Acid. This is, I suppose, basically a double team Razor's Edge, in that both guys lift them up, one takes each arm, they both take each arm, they lift the guy right up and then smash him right down. It's a pretty simple double team move, but holy hell, did it look effective. Here we have something from the classic Powerbomb line. We can't not have Terry Gordy here. Now, I think that the Powerbomb kind of has a strange history as a move. Generally, it's always accepted, of course, that Lou Thesz originated the move all the way back in the 1950s. Although the jury is out as to whether Lou Thesz really intentionally invented it, or it kind of just happened by accident in the course of that match with Antonino Rocca. I think then you have to kind of jump forward a little while till you then get guys like Terry Gordy, guys like Stan Hansen, Sid Vicious as well, who then kind of made the Powerbomb a regular move. And with Terry Gordy, the Powerbomb was always one of his main finishers. You've got the Lariat as well, you've got the DDT for him as well, but Powerbomb is definitely, I think Terry Gordy is certainly one of the first, along with Hansen, to really use that move and button it as a proper heavyweights finisher, so to speak. Up next, another obvious inclusion, Mitsuharu Misawa, the Tiger Driver. Tiger Driver, double underhook, flipping powerbomb, sit out, beautiful move. And obviously Mitsuharu Misawa finished so many matches with this move. Unless you were a big opponent, chances are that either a nice solid elbow or the Tiger Driver would finish you. I do also have to put another little shout out though for another guy here, because Mitsuharu Misawa doing the Tiger Driver certainly wasn't the first time I ever saw the move. The first time I saw the move was when Ahmed Johnson was doing it back in mid-90s WWF, the Pearl with a Plunge. And that's a pretty nice version of the Tiger Driver as well. It certainly was a freaking awesome move back then when I was watching. I used to really like Ahmed Johnson, and that finisher kicked ass. But of course, Misawa is the originator here. And we stay with Misawa because obviously, if we're going to have the Tiger Driver, we've got to have the Tiger Driver 91. Only ever busted out a few times, one of the most lethal looking moves in all of wrestling. I mean, what else can you say? It's the same setup as the Tiger Driver, but then it's a kneel down and a drop right on the frickin' neck. Just devastating. Almost always finished a match whenever Mitsuharu Misawa used it, and has kind of been brought back again in recent days with Will Ospreay doing it as the Storm Driver 93, and there being a bit of storyline, should I use the move, should I not, it's so dangerous, all that sort of thing. Which kind of goes to show just how risky and just how powerful this move is. It has that sort of place still after so many years in the annals of wrestling. And I do remember as well that this also even used to be in the SmackDown games. This was the Dangerous Driver back then, and that was always a good finisher if you wanted to put on to like a final boss type original character, a guy with like 100 odd rating. Give them the Dangerous Driver as their finisher, because that's utterly appropriate. And finally, appropriately, we end with a good old-fashioned powerbomb, a classic powerbomb from one of the masters of the powerbomb, a true super heavyweight, one of the greatest of all time. It's Vader's powerbomb. I mean, what else can you say? An awesome powerbomb. I mean, Vader is obviously a guy who has so many different ways of finishing people. He's got the powerbomb, he's got the chokeslam, he's got the face eraser, he can lariat, he can do the Vader bomb, he can do a freaking moonsault. He has so many ways of finishing. And the powerbomb's just one of many, many incredible moves that the almighty Vader, the late, great Big Van Vader, pulled off with absolute perfection, damn near every time. When I think of various times that he did it in All Japan and New Japan, obviously the one against Joe Furman, the one against Cactus Jack on the floor. So many memorable moments with this move and with this wrestler. And that about does it. Hopefully you've enjoyed this little look. Hopefully you've enjoyed me being a bit off the cuff on this one. I don't know if you can tell, I've not scripted this. I just thought I'd just go full bore at it and just communicate the love that I have for these moves as best as I possibly can. So, I'm sure there'll be another take on this list, maybe for something like a spear or a sort of slam moves, something like that, backdrops. There's plenty more ways this can go. Anyway, hopefully you've enjoyed this, and until the next time, bye for now.